Welcome to our debate about the state of the EU trade. This is very much what the European Union is about. It's a WTO notified trade body, so this is really very important. And this actually is the trade map of 2019. This is, I think, the most actual. Maybe the EU will soon publish a new one, and I appeal it would be really good to have more of these countries in red. That means that we have an active free trade agreement. Blue means full membership. We lost the United Kingdom, so it's a little bit painful. That's very much painful, actually. And yeah, we have to discuss this in this presentation. What we can do really to stabilize the world economy by more free trade agreements. This is very important. Protectionism kills, and it's a very big danger for the world economy in this global crisis of the corona 2020 to fall into this trap of protectionism. We had a lot of the issues with the American-Chinese trade relations. Also, the Europeans have this history of protectionism. This is all very dangerous, and we have to really stabilize the world economy, put it on a new growth trajectory in the next decade, and make sure that the EU is very much the center, the hub of global good governance, and the responsible pillar of the West in that respect is doing its part, its very important part to stabilize the global economy by concluding the key agreements. And so on Monday, there is this EU Trade Policy Day. This is basically what has to happen in a short summary of this next slide. It's very clear we need an FTA with Mercosur, with the South American market. It's already ready. It needs to be ratified. This is the key priority now, especially also with Australia and New Zealand. We are very much advanced already in the negotiation. With Indonesia, it's already basically finished. So these are the three ones which in 2021 can be reality, negotiated, ratified. Australia, New Zealand, the one package, Mercosur, the other one, and of course Indonesia. And this is very important. And then we have three very important agreements. Obviously, the big shame of European and US trade policy is that we, as the two pillars of the West, the US and the EU, have not managed to have a free trade agreement. This really needs to get going, and it needs to be concluded in this mandate, in the next presidential mandate of the US until 2024. Excuse me. And then also with until the European Parliament 2024. So this is the key task to have that agreement done. Then it's the African Union. I think with African Union, most of the agreement is already done. The African Union has now the Continental Free Trade Agreement. This is the moment to make sure there is a free trade and partnership agreement with Africa. And also with the Gulf Cooperation Council, it's more or less ready. To my best information, it needs to have the political leadership to sign this now. It's very important to replace Russian dirty carbon with our partners from the Gulf, and so to reduce our dependency on Russia. So that's very important. Obviously, also with India, there is a lot of work still to be done on both sides for Indian FTA, but let's be ambitious and let's make that happen by 2024. And Uzbekistan basically is ready as well. I don't know what is the thing. It's more about we appease and leave some in Europe want to leave the Uzbeks to the Russian, but of course they have understood that. Now they are a little bit hesitant, but the new president really would like to have a free trade agreement with the EU. It would be very good for Central Asia not to give it up. It's not inherited by the Russians. We should compete. And for ASEAN, that is also mostly ready, but it's a bit overshadowed with the problems with Cambodia and with Myanmar. And it's important to get this done as well, because these are our strategic partners. And we did much harm to the Indonesians and to in Southeast Asia. And we really should get this going now. Then obviously we need to stabilize the relations with China, sign this investment protection agreement, and also enlarge the customs union, CEFTA, Central and Eastern Europe, stabilize it, and to avoid any kind of protectionism, because that's a big danger in this crisis. And let's never forget at the last really major global crisis in 29, it was then the answer of the US, especially of protectionism, which has led to this global crisis escalating in the beginning of the 30s with all these terrible consequences. So if you really have an economic crisis, which we have now with Corona, a debt crisis, a emerging debt crisis, and all these negative consequences of the crisis now, then you add protectionism, or you destroy the chances for a recovery by not ratifying the Mercosur, you are very much responsible for the escalation of the economic crisis. And who really wants to be the person and the political leader to escalate this crisis into a global meltdown? I really call on everybody, ratify Mercosur. Don't repeat the eternal shame of these American policymakers. Good golly, smooth heli. Yes, this was big disaster, and the world paid heavily for that one. So it would be really a disaster to go the same way. Obviously, we need to readjust many things. That's very important. But China has understood the message, I think, of the last years. But we have to also celebrate the success of the WTO, because the Chinese accession in the WTO was enormously successful for the world. And that's not only for China, because they have managed to add no less than $13 trillion to global GDP output. That's good for everybody in the world. Yeah? That's not only for the Chinese, but for everybody. So our institutions work, China is working, we all are working. Yeah? Obviously, it requires maturity in governance, it requires keeping the rules. It requires, maturity. Yeah? That's very important, and China has to be in this dialogue. But I think this debate, is understood also by the Chinese authorities, and we have to be very attentive, obviously. But let's understand all these things in the right context. In the last 30 years of peace, since the end of the Cold War, since the victory year in 1990, it's unprecedented how much more people can live on this planet. We have reached almost 8 billion. That's 2.5 billion more people. Then the current the GDP, global GDP since victory moment, is unprecedented from the number 19, in the year 1990, when everything started with 22 trillion, now adding to 86 trillion. It's unprecedented, how much success because of the victory, meaning basically that everybody, almost everybody, maybe not the North Koreans, the Cubans, but most of the world can really participate in the production of goods and services in the global market. And that's really unprecedented. And it's really a major success. And this we should be very proud, because it lifts basically everybody up. And this is really an amazing success. More of it we need. Especially, my topic since 30 years is this US-EU trade agreement, and a little bit also the European unification in Eastern Europe. It's a little bit annoying that the US is only discussing about the UK, and China, Russia. I know that they are big nation states, they are very important actors, but the European Union is unified in its trade policy. We have 448 million people. We have 18.3 trillion GDP. This is the second largest economy. And I really cannot understand why everybody is only so focused on China, China, China. The EU has a bigger market, obviously, and will keep it for many years to come. We are almost as big as the United States of America. We are a powerful market even without the United Kingdom, which sadly it has left now the internal market. But this is an important player, so please, we have to take us more seriously, and also the world, please take the European Union and almost 500,000 Europeans very seriously. I have made a little bit this analysis also for the 9 countries which are going to join. We are 515 million people with the new Europeans who want to join us. That's a lot of people, and please, it's a powerful force to reckon with in the global trade policy. When it comes to our system, there's so much talk about the new economic system. Something has to change. The left and the right, they all want to somehow topple the system, hate capitalism, hate freedom. It's all a complete disaster. What we really need to understand, what was created in 1994, in 44, in Bretton Woods, really works. It was a lot of wisdom. It was the knowledge of the failures of the interwar years and of the whole global breakdown, escalating into two wars, and in the failure of the financial system before the war, after the war, which has allowed then to build a working system, and it works. Yeah. So we don't need a new system. We have NATO, we have the IMF, we have the United Nations. I've made a separate presentation what needs to change in this global governance. But in basic, our system works very well, and it is global market democracies. It is well governed, with institutional framework. Obviously, always needs to be improved, but in basically, it's really very good. We should celebrate the 30th of October, the day when GATT was created in 47. This is really historic achievement. Every student in the world, everybody in any school should know this date. This is so important, and trade unfortunately doesn't get the same attention like the UN or other global bodies, but it's really very important. The 15th of April, and this should be also that the WTO was created 25 years ago. Where was the big celebration? Like, it's really very annoying that in the public and even the politicians really, they don't know that. Is my personal, the knowledge about trade policy with our political elite is, I think, not existent, and that's why we get also these populist reflexes, because they don't know what kind of disaster they. So we have also to commemorate the failure when we couldn't go on in the Doha round. That was in 2008. Obviously, then later came the crisis just a month later, because we were all a little bit, excited and hyper in this election year. And then came this moment when nobody wanted to give in. EU agriculture, you see this huge subsidies of the US and the EU in textiles, in agriculture. This is really totally wrong. And then came the complete failure. If you ask who is this gentleman, I put a photo always, that's Mr. Mises. He is my hero on many of these things. He should be the hero of everybody interested in the Western world, in global prosperity, in trade, and in the issue of the connection between peace and trade. It's very important to read his books and also to see his legacy. So what we have now a freeze in enlargement of the WTO. This is of course a big problem. We have in Afghanistan actually is in the WTO 4 years ago, and since then, since July 2016, nobody has joined. Yeah, no Bosnia, no Serbia, no Kosovo, no Belarus, no Azerbaijan. You can obviously talk about all these countries, but I have now seen the new list of the WTO accession, and there is a real problem. We have no Serbia, no Bosnia, and no Kosovo in the enlargement round, which could be absolutely inside. That would be really good. Why are they not member in the last 4 years? What is exactly going on? There's a lot of talk. I understand, of course, because of the Trump debate, but then we take these countries in a kind of hostage. That's totally wrong. I'm not. I cannot understand why we don't enlarge further. Uzbekistan would be such a good candidate, so great reforms. And then we have on this list, obviously, countries like Iran and Syria, and Libya and South Sudan. And Iran. That's really bad. So we need to focus on the countries which really deserve membership. That's Ethiopia, that's the Lebanon, that's Algeria, that's Serbia, Bosnia, Kosovo. These are the countries we really should support. And then we have also massive progress achieved in just with this membership of the WTO. We don't need to invent the wheel new. We just need to do what is right. And then with some of the countries, we can really have massive progress already within 2 years. What is important, trade and customs union, to understand that we have this issue with the United Kingdom now, and with the enlargement of the customs union. This is a wonderful tool to enlarge. We have this customs union with Turkey, And I'm very much in favor of fast-tracking the membership of Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and the Western Balkans in the European Customs Union, or form a separate customs union, so we can replace the losses of the United Kingdom to some extent, and also offer the United Kingdom maybe some kind of deal to stay in most of the customs union terms, because it's really a tragedy what is happening. Let's see what is happening with Ukraine. Enormously successful, the turnaround. Ukraine has basically reoriented 70% of its trade towards the European Union, a major success. And this is really the way to counter the Corona recession and the Russian aggression, to really open the EU customs union eastwards, replace the UK with Ukraine, and make sure that we have this done very fast. Obviously, CEFTA is the tool for that, the Central European Free Trade Agreement, and make this the organizing tool for this customs union, that there is a own institution where maybe 2 levels of membership is also possible, but to institutionally keep everybody talking, so have a free level European trading system, EU, EFTA, CEFTA, and in CEFTA obviously to have the United Kingdom involved, at least, as an observer in the beginning, but not to let the UK drift away somewhere in a global space, but have it institutional, annexed or attached to Central Europe, because these are the NATO allies, these are the friends which need help. Very much the redistribution of the European Union is also going for the ex-communist East, and we should not leave the UK also out of this responsibility. When it comes to the Ankara agreement, it needs to be updated, the customs union with Turkey, to stabilize Turkey. That's really important, and to make sure that also other parties in the Turkish council are attached to that system. This is really very important, and this is the European trading system in its core, basically the customs union, which has to be enlarged, increased and stabilized now after Brexit, and also integrated Eastern Europe. So when it comes now to South America, it's very important to have this Mercosur agreement ratified. It would be a historic mistake and really a terrible failure of political governance of the European Union if that finished agreement, which was celebrated in 2019, has agreed after 25 years. And when you count the whole history of the trade system, that's an amazing thing that this was agreed. Bravo Juncker, bravo Malmström for this amazing achievement, and now it needs to be ratified. And this is also a major recovery item for the post-Corona 2020s. And we need to get this done now, and best to have it done by the 28th of June. Yeah, we can just commemorate agro-protectionism. If you look down the history lane and memory lane into 1902, the Germans imposed massive tariffs on Russian and Austrian, that was the main empires east of the German Empire, and was a historic mistake. And that is one of the key reasons which led then the Russians to align with the British and to the First World War and to the defeat. If we go to a Central European agro-protectionism and have the illusion that we will be an agro-superpower or something like this, it's simply beyond geographic reality, and it is a very big danger, in fact, because the other countries will be obviously really retaliating. And that's the danger of the French, Dutch and Austrians, and also the Germans. I could add Mrs. Glockner. They know, so they come with good intentions, but often they want to protect their farmers, but on what cost for the consumers, on what cost for global stability, for the global trading system. We already do a lot of redistribution in the EU. That's really so dangerous what they do, and they don't understand. So it's really kind of to cry that these young leaders who were the hope of Europe, we recently were told in 2007, these are the people who will save Europe, and they know so little about global trade situations. And they are obviously so good politicians, they always care for the people, but then they destroy global prosperity with their form of anti-Mercosur populism, and that's really very dangerous. So let's come to Indonesia. That's almost finished, and that's very important. The Dutch hopefully take the lead. but then is coming palm oil populism. That's one of these famous niche topics, which you can find the Nutella, fight the Nutella. You want to save the forest somewhere, and you think by boycotting or for prohibiting people's livelihoods and starving them into submission, you will save the Amazonas or save the jungle in Indonesia. And instead of really working with the authorities there and with the farmers there to have better production, which is part of any FTAs, all the trade negotiators, they take these considerations in the discussions, and it's the only tool we really have to improve Amazonas and the situation of the palm oil farmers. But no, then we do the boycott, starving other people. It's so mean, it's so brutal not to buy things from other people and to have some kind of fringe issues of children, oh, my Nutella is killing the man. I could get on and on, but you get the idea. This is really very exploitative, and it's very bad of rich countries to behave so mean, and we shouldn't do that. Anyhow, time to do it, and time to sign also with the ASEAN, the EU Indonesian FTA is almost ready, and no to irresponsible, irrational, protectionist populism. Yeah? That's immoral, that's anti-scientific, yeah? And that's really very mean. And we make fools out of ourselves. Look, when you have then the Indonesia taking the European Union to the WTO, I mean, yeah, then we are like, what? Are we the multilateralists, the scientific guys, and there are people who want to keep up the global system? And then Indonesia, with all respect, they go then to the institutions we have created to keep up the global system and claim that we have lost our minds. I mean, are you not ashamed? Anyhow, and then everybody congratulates for the ASEAN Day, all the foreign ministers of Europe, but the next day they are blocking the ASEAN trade agreement. Yeah, I mean, this is outrageous. Anyhow, Australia and New Zealand, this is of course really very questionable. Why we have now 17 years of EU and everything, and we don't have a trade agreement with them. Can anybody explain me that? Anyhow, at least we have managed to have a CETA with Canada. That was a big success. Here I have the celebration of the new trade commissioner. Congratulations. He's, by the way, the first one from ex-communist Eastern Europe. It's a historic achievement. It's no longer, because that's the most important commission portfolio, it's no longer in the hand of the rich Westerners. But now let's see who has ratified the Canada agreement. Yeah? Oh, and now I find this is very actual from the last month, basically, who has notified the EU Council that they have ratified. Almost only half of them. And you remember it was one of the big battles in 2016 that they all wanted to co-ratify this, yeah, because it should never have happened. And I can just never consult any EU member states ever again, yeah, on an FTA, because it's outrageous what they have done. Creating a complete mess, making fools out of Europe with our relation with our NATO partner Canada, blocking global prosperity and European prosperity, and then not caring so much that they didn't even ratify it. Anyhow, it's a celebration, it's done, it's enforced, that's good, but it's so vicious, immoral, and shameful what happened. And all the central right-wing people, especially, and the liberals who were opposing that, yeah, they should really change their party affiliation to some kind of left-wing or right-wing populist party. Yeah, this is shameful what happened in the CETA, and anyhow. Same actually on, of course, the free trade agreement. It was called TTIP. 30 years ago, I was already promoting this. And 30 years ago, the question was very good. Why don't we have a free trade agreement with the big economy which is protecting us, the United States of America? We are in NATO allies, but we don't have a free trade agreement, whereas the US and the EU have free trade agreements with almost everybody. Obviously, we are very tightly economically interconnected. And what Trump is saying actually is not true. The US is in the advantage, but it's also the bigger economy and was always much richer and has much more invested in the European Union. Of course, somehow the numbers will be changing now after Brexit, but nevertheless, it's huge. This is really the core of the global economy, is just the EU and the United States of America. These are basically half of the global economy, and we don't have an FTA because of some chlorine chicken and anti-Americanism in Austria and Germany and in France. It's a shame. Anyhow, Trump has made, of course, a disaster out of this as well. And now we have to somehow overcome that. Hopefully, with a new president, there will be a new impetus, and we hopefully can celebrate a day of for the FTA between the EU and the US. And obviously, that would be the one key instrument to increase European and American and global prosperity, and also show the world that we are very serious. So with Africa, we more or less we have with most of the African states already very advanced free trade agreements with South Africa, with West Africa. The economic integration is very much advanced, especially with the former British and French parts. And this is all very good. And so I don't know why it takes so long and to conclude a free trade agreement with all Americas. But now with the Continental Free Trade Agreement already ratified to in force in Africa, so the situation is really very positive to have that done as well. And I think we are somehow stuck with the DCFTA with Tunisia, but hopefully there will be also more wisdom in the European institutions now after this trade policy day. And the 2nd of October should be also the day for celebrating the India FTA. Obviously, there is a lot of potential here. India is a very big economy, is on the same level in population like China, but obviously is a pro-Western country, hopefully more and more. And we should also try to get India into the OECD and open our common trade and have this free trade agreement done fast, and that is huge potential. India could produce 3 times the output on Chinese level. If it just reaches global average, it would be already massively adding global GDP, and maybe from 3 trillion now to triple it in the next 20 years if a free trade agreement is done. Obviously, I talked already about Uzbekistan, but that would be also quite logical. It is all prepared. I can really not understand. Maybe they are too busy in the European Commission, or I think it's more about obviously geostrategic appeasement, and we sacrifice Uzbekistan's WTO accession and FTO to the FTA to the Russian appeasement. But that would be a strategic disaster, and I hope there will be wisdom. So we have, of course, with the Gulf Cooperation Council, with Saudi Arabia and the partners in the Gulf, this is important for energy security, and it was very much advanced, and it's time to get this going. I don't know what we are waiting for. Japan was a major success now. This is really major progress, and that's really good. And you see already the results are showing it, and this has to be continued. And then obviously we should have with all of America and America itself under Biden, hopefully, to be ambitious to revive the idea of a pan-American free trade agreement. And so also on that side and to move ahead very much. Yeah. So, it's better to have FTAs than to be, every condition fulfilled in advance. Yeah? Because we don't want to blackmail country. We don't want to boycott them. In a partnership, if we are interested in development of agriculture, in development of environment, climate, and standards in labor rights and human rights, obviously we want that. But this must be in a partnership. And the way to have a free trade agreement with a country, with a region, is really to increase the level of governance in these countries. And this is the way. Without a free trade agreement, just with appeals on Twitter, we will not achieve a lot. Yeah? So this is much better to have then in the agreement targets what to achieve over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, and to gradually. And it's not imperialism, we are not imposing standards. Yeah? We are developing together, and we are trying to support compliance. This is the way. Yeah, I can really not understand why we are so much against trade, and the leftists and the populists, right? Both sides are so wrong on that one. And our politicians, unfortunately, are so badly informed about what is the really beneficial effect of trade policy. So protectionism kills and leads to wars. Protect us from the protectionists. Yeah? This is my slogan 30 years in Brussels and beyond. You know, everybody who calls for protectionism, we really should be protected from them because it's an evil thing to do. Yeah? It sounds nice to be protected, but you know they only want to rule us. Yeah, they want to abuse us. They want to have more customs. And they want not to protect us from anything. We really have to be careful with the protectionists and counter this kind of process in the crisis. A Europe that protects. Yeah, that's the first slogan I ever heard, and I'm really getting so angry when I hear it. Anyhow, it's the same with this anti-migration populism. It's again dangerous. They are like the twin evils: protectionism and populism, and the xenophobic. You know, always protect us, protect us, protect us. Yeah. What really works, yeah, is prosperity, and prosperity requires trade. Yeah? This is how civilization has developed. Yeah. This is how our cities have developed, how our technology has developed. It's the exchange of goods and services on a peaceful, mutual contractual basis. This is what trade is. This is peaceful exchange voluntarily. And this is the peace. And so it's very important to have this message clearly out there. So what we need is the institutions for that. I talked about the WTO, but I see a strong role for the OECD in the future as global union of market democracies. Now we have the next Secretary General heading for 2021, and you know this is really very important to have a good global, also good personality with global capacities and experience who is ready to manage these organizations. It's a bit dusty and a bit, you know, with some kind of social democratic tax dogmas, and so that's all, you know, a bit problematic. But it needs to be refined. It needs to be in competition also with the UN as a global union of market democracies, and it needs to be enlarged. Yeah? From India, Nigeria, Argentina, the Mercosur countries, South Africa, this should be the answer because we are not open enough. Then Russia created BRICS, and there is all this OPEC, and there shouldn't be a OPEC, there shouldn't be a BRICS, there should be just OECD, should be comprehensive, should be open for all market democracies. And you know, if some countries then sign at least that they want to reform, then reform them inside. Yeah, give this also even Saudi Arabia a chance. It's obviously not a democracy, but you know, if it wants to reform now and it wants to open, give it an advice, assistant or observer status to OECD if it leaves the and the OPEC. Yeah? And the same obviously for all other countries who want to join the free world. Basically, I call it free world, maybe a term out of the Cold War vocabulary. Let's call it the global union of the market democracies. This is very important, and this is a big opportunity for world, also with a parliamentarian assembly, and also with a clear role that the OECD is organizing the G20, which it does already, but not with Russia, obviously. Russia has nothing to do there. It's a wrong invitation list. Why we kick it out from the G7 and then invite it into the G20 again and give the G20 then a bigger role? I mean, that's nonsense. Yeah? So no authoritarian aggressor state shouldn't be there. But you know, it should be basically in the bigger group of the OECD and like the annual assembly, and then it should be also the board meeting of OECD should be the G7, G8. I made a separate presentation on that one, and that's really the way. And to also, I think we have to make an offer to the OPEC members to leave that cartel and join the OECD, and also to Mercosur, obviously, and to make sure. At the same time, I want to make an appeal for this budget target of 1%. The EU should also, and the EU member states and everybody in OECD should also spend 1% for international development. We have been a little bit less ambitious recently, and this is not the 2000 plan. And now with Corona, we need more money for sure to fight global poverty, and that's very important. So let me end this presentation with this free trade agreements. Please ratify Mercosur, Australia, European Union, let's do it. And Indonesia, this is really very, very important. And let's be ambitious what we can achieve in this mandate until 2024 with the US, with ASEAN, with the African Union, with the Gulf Cooperation Council, with India, and with Uzbekistan and possible others in Central Asia. And let's make it happen. Let's really not somehow be paralyzed by the crisis. Let's be strategic. Let's be successful. And it's openness, trade. That's the basis of the prosperity we have achieved. And let's continue in this way. And let's reform our institutions. But let's make sure that we are not dismantling any of the really very well working institutions. We will overcome this crisis by doing more of the successful things we are already currently doing. And just we have to be a little bit more ambitious to do them better, faster, and to be more open, because openness is the key to prosperity. Thanks a lot.